Welcome to the Child Care Aware of Minnesota Legislative Update. My name is McCully, and I'm Executive Director here to tell you a little bit about the action from last week, ending Friday, March 15th, and what we have to look ahead to the week of March 18th. So a few reminders, we are still waiting on the governor's supplemental budget bill. We anticipate there will be one, as well as his bonding recommendations. Once those come out, then the financial aspect of the legislature will kick in. But for now, we're fairly focused on policy. So bills that got heard last week. First, the House Children and Families Committee dealt with two bills that they had heard previously. One is the school age care program being allowed to offer before and after school to pre-K age children. This was amended and passed on to the Education Finance Committee. Also, and that's House File 3721 from Representative Coulter. Also, House File 3678, carried by Representative Hicks, did have a hearing. This is the diaper distribution grant program that was funded last year, and the legislation would slightly increase the amount of funding they have available to spend on the operating side of that program. That was also laid over for consideration. In the Senate, there were several policy and technical bills heard. I'm just going to lift up a few of those. Senate File 2437 from Senator Wickland, and that is removing some obsolete language from child care assistance. Senate File 4572, also Senator Wickland, that is the DHS overall policy bill. Senate File 4618, Senator Bolden, and that is the Office of Inspector Children's Licensing Issues, so those related to child care. And Senate File 4662, Senator Mann, and that was anti-kickback legislation for the Child Care Assistance Program. Most of those bills were now sent onto the Judiciary Committee for further discussion. In the House and Senate Education Finance Committees, House File 4500, carried by Representative Clardy, and Senate File 4107, carried by Senator Kunish. Both were heard and both were passed on to their respective higher education committees. And this is a bill that has been moving steadily forward for about 8 years now, focused primarily on teachers of color and Indigenous teachers. In this case, it is language to make permanent what was a pilot scholarship program for teachers of color and Indigenous teachers, but also add some additional one-time money to not only the scholarship program, but some mentoring and other supports. Those, again, will be heard in higher ed in the future. And then finally, in the Senate Tax Committee, I previewed this last week, Senate File 4430, Senator Hochschild. This is a bill that would help to give some relief to those who rent their space in the form of a credit. So property tax-like credit for rental programs in childcare. And that was laid over for further consideration. So looking ahead to the coming week, we have several bills. My caveat here is going to be that these will likely be added to as the week goes on, because again, by the end of this coming week, it will be that deadline. So this may be only a partial list, but you can always find a list of legislative hearings at the Minnesota Legislature website. So first, both the Senate and House Education Policy Committees will be completing their overall policy bills. Senate File 3567, carried by Senator Swedzinski, is getting its final hearing on Monday. And in the House, House File 3782, carried by Representative Pryor, will be heard across Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, culminating with the markup of the bill on Thursday. In the Children, Families, and Children and Families Committee, several bills again this week as we move toward deadline. House File 4176, carried by Representative Perez Vega. That was initially heard a couple of weeks back, so there'll be no more testimony, but they will be voting on it. And this is the bill that makes some changes to the VPK program, basically merges School Readiness Plus and VPK together and makes some eligibility changes. And also House File 4425, Representative Hemmingson Yeager, heard previously, will get its final discussion this week. And that's a bill that is looking at putting restrictions on programs, HOAs or condo associations, basically prohibiting them from stopping folks who own their own home and meet qualifications from having a family child care license. The House Children and Families Committee will also be taking up a number of the same policy and technical bills that were heard in the Senate last week. Probably the main one to follow is House File 4537, Representative Pinto, and that's that Office of Inspector General licensing bill. Two more that they'll be hearing this week. First, House File 367, and that's a bill from previous sessions carried by Representative Freiberg. And that is a bill that is looking at child care center and family child care providers being allowed to set more stringent policies regarding immunizations. It's a bill that started long ago and, of course, continues to be under discussion. So that is being heard this week. And finally, pay attention to House File 4732, carried by Representative Pinto. Right now, that is a bill dealing with payment of developmental screening aid, but it is indicated that will become what's called the vehicle bill. So when committees put together an omnibus bill where they take many of the concepts they've heard and roll them together, they name that a vehicle bill. So House File 4732 will be the bill we're going to follow the rest of the session. Finally, just to remind you again that you can find all of these bills on our legislative bill tracker at our website. And there are hot links to go to each of them and take a harder look at them if you want to see the language. Finally, I just want to put in one quick plug for Voices for Children Day, Advocacy for Children Day coming up. We've called it many things over 20 years, but Advocacy for Children Day is coming up on Monday, March 25th. So in another week, but would love to have any and all of you who care about early childhood and children's issues show up. It's at the state capitol from 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. Lots of activities for kids as well. So come and let your voice be known. And thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next week.